August 11th, 2025. A Chinese Coast Guard vessel, CCG-3104, a 1,500-ton type U-56 behemoth, chose to unleash its fury on the Philippine Coast Guard ship BRP Suluan. Beijing's captains barked orders over the radio, asserting sovereignty based on China's historical claims, which trace back to ancient maps and the post-World War II 11- line that later became the 9- line, encompassing Scarborough Shoal as part of their territorial waters, as their ship sprayed powerful water cannons at the smaller Philippine vessel, a mere 321-ton Parola-class patrol boat, forcing it to bob like a toy in the tempest. But in the chaos, CCG-3104 collided with its own ally, the Chinese destroyer Guilin, a sleek Type 052D warship, their steel hulls grinding in a humiliating twist of fate amid the blinding rain and thunder. The bitterness of the scene was unforgettable, the outmatched BRP Suluan retreating before these steel giants, its crew clinging to rails as waves and cannons battered their resolve. Yet the American destroyer USS Ralph Johnson, a 200-ton Arleigh Burke-class powerhouse built for unyielding dominance, was no bystander, shadowing the confrontation from the haze. It projected quiet authority, a reminder that U.S. Naval might still commands the seas. So, what really happened in that maelstrom? Were lives lost in the collision? Let's uncover the truth. For Washington, the USS Ralph Johnson's presence was a deliberate stand for freedom of navigation, upholding international law amid Beijing's aggressive claims. But China had darker designs, drawing from the 2012 standoff, when Beijing seized Scarborough Shoal after a tense blockade against Philippine forces, and the 2021 swarm of over 287 Chinese fishing vessels that choked these waters. This incident echoed a pattern of intimidation. Scarborough, a ring of barely visible reefs, has become a powder keg. Whoever controls it grips the throat of global trade. Over 4 trillion in goods flows through the South China Sea annually, carried by more than 70,000 merchant vessels. Oil tankers alone haul 20 million barrels of crude daily, fueling giants like Japan, South Korea, and the US. If China normalizes its grip, economies could be strangled without a shot fired. As the storm intensified, the USS Ralph Johnson crackled over the radio, intervening with a stern warning to respect maritime rights. At precisely 6:32 a.m., the Chinese destroyer Guilin, a Type 052D Predator slicing through the gale, and the Coast Guard vessel CCG-3104 surged forward in hot pursuit of the Philippine Coast Guard ship BRP Suluan. Their gray hulls pounded the swells, engines roaring defiance. But in the blinding fury of the storm, disaster struck from within. Guilin veered too close, its bow slamming into CCG-3104's side with a deafening grind of metal. Sparks flew in the downpour, hulls buckling, a self-inflicted wound that exposed the recklessness of Beijing's aggression. The intent was clear and unmistakable. This was no accident of weather. It was a calculated hunt. Guilin cut across BRP Suluan's bow at a perilous 400 yards, its wake churning the sea into treacherous foam that threatened to swamp the smaller ship. Over the radio, a voice thick with menace crackled through the static. "Philippine vessel, you are in Chinese waters. Withdraw immediately or face severe consequences." CG-3104, undeterred by its fresh damage, joined the assault, unleashing torrents of water cannons that hammered BRP Suluan's deck, shattering windows and drenching the crew in icy blasts. On BRP Suluan, the Philippine sailors stood firm, their orders unyielding: maintain course, hold speed. But the fear was palpable, trained for patrols, not pandemonium. They gripped the rails until their knuckles blanched white, hearts pounding against the roar of the storm. Out of the tempest's veil, the USS Ralph Johnson emerged. Riding parallel at 600 yards, the American destroyer, a sentinel of steel, issued its own radio warning: all vessels, this is the United States Navy, cease aggressive actions and respect international maritime law. On its bridge, commands were crisp and mechanical: steady course, no escalation. The restraint burned like fire in the sailors' veins, to warriors honed for split-second decisions. The urge to respond to armed missiles, to elevate guns, was overwhelming. Instinct screamed against this indignity, but orders held like iron chains. Not a single weapon was activated, not a turret stirred. The tension suffocated, escalating as Guillen pressed harder, edging the distance to a heart-stopping 350 yards. In naval terms, it was suicide. Two massive hulls colliding in this gale could rip open compartments, ignite fuel lines, and claim hundreds of lives in minutes. One panicked swerve, one miscalculated turn, and 155 meters of American steel could ignite a global inferno. If you were the commander of the USS Ralph Johnson, staring into the abyss of the storm, would you order your ship to fire? Let's see what the commander decides. The standoff dragged on for 45 agonizing minutes, each second stretched thin by the howling winds and relentless rain. Chinese ships circled tighter, their damaged forms still menacing. Wakes merging with the storm's fury. Amid the storm's fury, the USS Ralph Johnson appeared cornered, its silhouette battered by relentless waves. But beneath those steel decks lurked an arsenal capable of altering the fate of nations in mere moments. This 200-ton Arleigh Burke-class destroyer housed 96 vertical launch system cells, each primed to unleash Tomahawk cruise missiles with over 1,000-mile precision strikes, SM-2 interceptors for mid-range threats, or SM-6 missiles blending offense and defense in a deadly symphony. Its AN Spy-1D radar tracked over 200 targets simultaneously, piercing the chaos with unerring accuracy, while the phalanx CIWS could erupt in a wall of steel at 4,500 rounds per minute, shredding any incoming missile or aircraft daring to approach. Tied into the U.S. Navy's Aegis network, every ping was shared with satellites overhead and submarines below, forming an unbreakable web of command and control. Beijing's forces bristled with menace, but the reality was stark. The Guilin, a 7,500-ton Type 052D destroyer, packed 64 vertical launch cells, including the fearsome YJ-18 anti-ship missile streaking at supersonic speeds over 335 miles, its warhead designed to gut carrier hulls. Alongside it, the CCG-3104 1,500-ton Type 056 vessel added water cannons and light guns for close-quarters bullying. The Philippine BRP Suluan, at just 321 tons, offered only light arms and Rode and Schwartz radios, a fragile defender reliant on allies in raw firepower. This lone American destroyer outmatched the Chinese pair combined, its Aegis superiority ensuring any real exchange would reduce them to flaming wrecks in under 10 minutes. The CCG-3104, smaller than the destroyer shadowing the standoff, but no less vicious, swooped in like a predator. Sirens wailed through the wind. Water cannons erupted in torrents forceful enough to splinter wooden decks and shred nets. Several boats were rammed outright, their fragile hulls crumpling against the 1,500-ton steel monster. One fisherman later recounted the horror with trembling voice. "They hunted us like animals in the storm, like we were prey to be drowned and forgotten." By mid-morning, at least 10 boats had been driven off, nets in tatters, catches scattered to the depths for coastal villages. This spelled not just hunger but economic devastation, the obliteration of livelihoods in a single, savage hour. International law had decreed in 2016 that these waters fell within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. Yet Beijing's brutality laid bare the grim reality. Paper rulings meant nothing against steel and cannons. Aboard the USS Ralph Johnson, American sailors glimpsed the distant sprays and sinking silhouettes via radar, the chaos unfolding like a nightmare. If China succeeds in cementing its dominance here, the fallout would be staggering. Picture Beijing wielding the power to block, divert, or sever $4 trillion in annual trade through the South China Sea. That's nearly a quarter of global maritime commerce. Ferried by over 70,000 merchant vessels. Oil tankers alone shuttle 20 million barrels of crude daily, powering economies from Japan to the US. This isn't mere fishing rights, it's the leverage to choke nations economically, waging war without a whisper of gunfire. For America, the stakes couldn't be clearer. The credibility of its alliances hangs in the balance. If the Philippines, a steadfast treaty ally, is abandoned to face rammings and water cannons amid storms, what trust can Japan or South Korea place in Washington's vows already? Chinese state media spins each collision as triumphant proof of unyielding might. Every propaganda chip eroding faith in U.S. resolve. Yet the USS Ralph Johnson's patrol unveiled a deeper truth. The United States remains vigilant, steel in the water, safeguarding the axiom that no nation monopolizes the world's sea lanes. Scarborough Shoal transcends rocks and reefs. It's the emblem of dueling futures, one governed by law, shielding the vulnerable, and another dictated by brute force. This is the paradox of 21st century power. America helms history's most formidable navy, a single destroyer packing fleet-shattering firepower. Victory now lies not in blasts, but in endurance to uphold justice when mocked, stand resolute as allies endure harassment, and prove strength eclipses missiles and guns. For the United States, the choice is unequivocal. Surrender the seas to intimidation, and the world forged by America's greatest generation, a realm of open trade and collective security, begins unraveling thread by thread. That stormy August 11th morning taught one indelible lesson: peace is fragile. It endures only when defenders refuse to avert their gaze. If you cherish truth and insight, hit subscribe and join us. Disclaimer: this content is a work of fiction, intended for entertainment purposes only. Any resemblance to real events, places, or people is coincidental. The content does not represent the official views of any organization and does not promote violence, illegal behavior, or discrimination. Viewers should exercise their own judgment and not use this content for purposes other than entertainment.